Well, sweet stars above, now here's a sight I never expected to see in my life. My good friend Andre is actually performing his duties and there's not a single bottle of alcohol in sight. I must be hallucinating. Busy here, so kindly fuck off, Hiroshi. I'm trying to fix this Meg before the next assault. With a hammer? Look, I know you Yalchans are a bit backwards compared to the civilized countries on Otus, but surely even you learned how to use a bit more sophisticated tools. Hilarious. Right now I'm trying to beat this armor plating back into shape, so powered hammer is the best for the job. Except your face, of course. Still, if you think that you can find me better tools here on this blasted plane, then by all means, go ahead. Nah, too much effort. Besides, if the pilot is trusting you to fix this Meg, then it's their ass on the line. Where are they, by the way? On her way home. Well, at least the parts of medical team and I managed to scrape off the cockpit. Direct hit from Yadran artillery. It's a bloody miracle the ammo rack didn't detonate. Well, shit, I'm sorry. Don't be. Didn't know the girl myself. And, well, let's just say we all knew the risks when we enlisted. She knew what she was getting into each time a paycheck came. At least this time there are no freak shows at every step like on New Sajar or Katanab. Just plain old conventional warfare. A bit too conventional if you ask me. I knew Yadrans were feudal, but I had no idea they fought like medieval knights with waving banners and sword-wielding warriors. Then you clearly haven't seen what those heat swords can do to a man in power armor. Still, we would be lucky if they all fought like that, but unfortunately swords are restricted to the highest ranks, with levies running around with regular guns, same as we do. So yeah, I suppose you're right, not much is conventional about this war, especially not casualties. We had worse conflicts back on Earth. Sure, but they were stretched over several years. Here we lost 500,000 people on day one, and speaking of casualties, just turn around. Bloody hell, I'll never get used to that sight. What the hell? Are we that pressed for transport vehicles that we have to move our dead around in open trucks? At least they could cover them. Holy shit, good thing the new guys are on the other side of the camp now. I don't think they would care. Look at the uniforms on the corpses. They're not regular army, they're clones. But there's so many of them. Look, this convoy is at least several kilometers long. I knew Command used them as vanguard, but I had no idea they lost so many men already. That's what happens when you're thrown at enemy defenses to soften them up. Still, I wonder what they're doing with these bodies. Oi, trooper, where are you going? First time seeing a clone, soldiers? Yes, we're second liners, so we never had the pleasure. I see. Then I'm going to ignore the fact that you are clearly unaware that the star on my helmet indicates a rank of a captain. So next time you address me, stand at attention, understood? Good. And answering your question, me and the lads are taking this meat pile back to landing zone, where it will be loaded onto cryoship and sent back to Minerva. I see, sir. Sorry about your men, sir. At least they'll be buried home. Buried? No, Private, we're not going to bury them, neither here nor back on Minerva. Per standard protocol, each clone body, if it can be retrieved, is to be returned back to the origin facility, so that their genetic material can be reused to create additional troopers. That's... You're alright with that, sir? It's in the protocol, so yes, I'm alright with it. Well, look at that. I turn around for a minute and already my deadbeat technicians abandon their posts and cause a traffic jam. Move along, Captain. Get your men home. Now you two, go get your staff and report to HQ in 5. Captain, sir, I still have to patch up that mech. No time, Corporal. Some of the lads from the 8th ran into a bunch of Yadrans entrenched in a set of mountain caves, 50 kilometers north of here. Thing is, this time they're led by someone who actually knows a thing or two about tactics, and they set up a ton of traps and retreated deeper underground. Our infantry is going to need our help, both with dismantling those defenses and clearing the caves afterwards, so get your asses in gear. Time for some frontline engineering. Yes, sir. We'll be in HQ in a minute. Damn, not again! And what got you so happy? Nothing. I just realized something. We're going into the mountains to fight dragons in their underground lairs. All those books I read as a kid turn out to be about us. And I really hope there will be a hoard of gold at the end of this. Alright, see you at HQ. Stars, I need a drink. Salutations citizens, and welcome back to Second Chance, where our forces, finally after a long campaign, managed to secure our territory and take the fight to the enemy. And here they are, in the orbits and on the surface of planet Falcon in Zamathon system, new capital of Kingdom of Yadra. It took our fleet almost 3 months to soften the enemy up, but right now, with all major defenses taken care of, our land troops have begun their invasion, with the newest addition to our army, 6 million of cloned soldiers, leading the way. Unfortunately for us, our orbital bombardment was not enough to ensure a swift victory. Yadran Empress have gathered an extremely large army on the surface, over 20 million troops, and even though they may not have their strongholds and bunkers anymore, they can still put up a serious fight, so serious that within just a few days, some of our leading armies have suffered severe casualties, up to 25% of their initial manpower. So, it is yet another battle that turned into a meat grinder, but with clones on the front lines and support of our 2 brigades of mechs, we should be able to pull through. And we desperately need to win here. As you may remember, few days after the invasion began, we received some very concerning news. The Billion Mind, a hive mind-like collective that exists beyond our northern border, has stirred yet again and invaded space of our allies, the Utkavongo. That in itself is very bad news for our allies, but then you have to remember that they are embroiled in 2 different wars already, one where they fight with us against Yanari-led coalition, and one when they try to help mechanoids of the Xenac Forge to defend themselves against bloodthirsty Disberserkers. And while our war is not that concerning, the second one definitely is, because the Utkavongo already lost most of their fleet when fighting the Berserkers, which means they have nothing to defend themselves against the Mind. So, if we don't want the Mind to completely eradicate the Utkavongo, and we don't want that because they are our good allies and important citizens, then we have to help them. Especially since, as you can clearly see, the Mind has means to wipe our allies out. For some reason, despite losing several planets in recent years, the Billion Mind managed to construct an imposing armada of warships, one that makes even our own Task Force Manticore pale in comparison. Fortunately though, thanks to Utkavongo long-range scanners, we now have an unprecedented opportunity to take a look into Billion Home System, and the intel we gain from those scans may help us prepare for their arrival. First and foremost, we can take a look at enemy ships, how they are built and armed, and it's quite enlightening. In the last war, the Mind mostly focused on vessels armed with coil guns, similar to the ones we use. This trend is still here, but it also seems that Billions added a new set of kinetic autocannons to their ships, which, when you think about it, makes quite a lot of sense. See, coil guns are large, rather unwieldy, and fire only a single shot. Powerful, but not that accurate. Autocannons, on the other hand, are smaller and, as their name suggests, can provide saturation fire with tons of smaller, less dangerous, but more accurate projectiles. So, while large guns can focus fire on enemy capital ships, autocannons can keep smaller, more maneuverable vessels away, and that means that our torpedo boats may have a hard time. On the other hand, if they survive enemy barrage, then they can be sure that their payload won't just be shot down. Autocannons may be accurate, but they're still not enough to track missiles, and the Billy ones don't seem to have any sort of point defense weapons, an advantage that we will have to use if we want to take out enemy combat swarm. That enemy fleet was not the only thing that surprised us though. When we received data from Utkavongo scans, most of our officers immediately noticed one very specific thing, a huge structure, one even larger than our Inti station, that orbited one of the barren planets in Billion Home System of Yiland. It seems that in recent years the Mind not only gathered enough resources for that fleet, it also managed to save enough to invest into this project. Only problem is, we have no idea what this structure may be. At first, we believed that it may be some sort of habitat station, but the readings show almost no movement or life forms there. If anything, it looks like the Mind constructed this thing and simply left it alone with skeleton crew to just drift silently in the void. But that, of course, makes no sense, so immediately several theories popped up. Some of our officers believe that this may be a military base, others that it's one of Mind's hatcheries but adapted to vacuum of space, and another group believes that this massive structure is not yet complete, and what we see is just a first stage of some far more ambitious project, which is a bit disconcerting. If this really is just a foundation of something larger, then whatever it may turn out to be, it's probably going to have a significant effect on Billion power in the galaxy. So, for the coming war, it may be a good idea to designate this structure as a priority target. Whatever it is, if the Mind is trying to build it, blowing it up to hell will surely make everyone safer. But that's all in the future. For now, we have a clear target right in front of our faces, invasion of Falcon boss, so let's get back into the fray. The reports that we received from General Televin's forces are a mixed bag. Our Kithri commander appears to be confident that, given enough time, we should be able to push through to victory, but on the other hand he also mentions, very loudly, that it's not going to be a clear victory, or even a close one. Our fleet may have broken Yadran ranks, so that their forces are now spread across the entire planet, but it also means that, instead of several strong points, our troops will have to deal with thousands of small pockets of resistance, where enemy knowledge of local terrain will surely walk against us. More importantly, because Yadran defenders have been backed into a corner, they now fight with reckless fury in order to protect their homes. And although we still bite them harder than they bite us, their morale means that we have to spend far more men to overwhelm their defenses. Another problem is how Yadrans wage war. While we're mostly focused on combined arms and local fire superiority, our dragon-like opponents prefer to fight at close range, especially the higher parts of their society. Their grunts, or levies since they still operate on feudal system, carry mostly rapid-firing kinetic weapons, which are best when used in tight corners, while their officers, knights essentially, rely on heavy power armor and melee weapons to deliver devastating charges. And that tactics actually pairs well with their knowledge of terrain. They can draw our forces into favorable position and unleash a close-range attack where our superior weapons are not that useful. On the other hand though, if they screw up their ambush, we can just rip them to shreds from distance, and slowly, day by day, our forces managed to do just that. One by one, Yadran combat groups were isolated and wiped out, unable to reinforce each other because of constant threat of our fleet. As soon as any major enemy group appeared to be in the open, it was immediately vaporized by unrelenting bombardment. And, finally, on 11th of March 2264, last defenders of Falcabos, a handful of bloodied garrison soldiers, surrendered to our forces. The victory was ours, but like on New Sajar, it was not a pretty one. Of our 12 million regular soldiers, around 6 million were either killed or wounded. Our mechanized battalions fared better though. Of 200,000 combat mechs, we lost less than 22,000. But it was the clones who suffered the most in this battle. Of their initial 6 million, only 800,000 were still able to fight after Yadran surrendered. But while such proportion of losses would be unacceptable among regular troops, with clones it doesn't really matter. We can just ship their bodies back home, dump them in the vats and have another batch ready within 3 or 4 months. And we're definitely going to need them. The new Yadran capital might have been captured, but we still need to hold it, and as we know, Yadrans are not exactly fans of our nation, so they may cause us some troubles in the future. And another thing, our enemies fought so hard because they were sure that their empress was with them on the surface. Each day she broadcasted inspiring speeches from the front, in order to rally her warriors to fight harder. But now, she's nowhere to be found. Maybe she escaped or hidden somewhere among the population. Or maybe she wasn't on Falcabos at all. No matter, our troops have their work cut out for them, and we'll have to get the population of this planet in line, while our fleet will continue its harassing operations. Another battle might have been won, but the war continues. As it continues in the north. In the newest report we received from the Utkavongo, we learned that Billy 1 combat swarm arrived in their home system and was preparing to move into orbit of their homeworld, no doubt with intentions of bombing their defenses. Unfortunately, as was mentioned before, most of Utkavongo fleet has been turned into space dust by these berserkers, which means that the only defenses our allies have between them and overwhelming ravenous swarm is their orbital spaceports, which, as you might expect, is not nearly enough to even make a dent in Billy 1 combat swarm, so very soon it will be up to regular Utkavongo land forces to keep their home planet safe. But the report was even worse. You might have noticed there a lone corvette that was moving to leave the system. On board of that corvette was the most prominent figures of Utkavongo government, including their president and prime minister, as well as top officers from their military staff. This means that, while our allies will certainly do their best to hold their ground, they have very little hopes of actually prevailing in this fight. Soon, people of Utkal will see with their own eyes the true terror that is mindless Billy 1 invasion. We can only hope that their leaders organized some sort of evacuation, otherwise billions of Utkavongo citizens will be in grave danger, and until we can wrap things up in the south, we will not be able to help them. Because, as you can see, we have to deal with some issues of our own. After losing their fleet in failed attempt to capture Inti Station, Kingdom of Yadra turned to other means of combat. propaganda war, one that seems to be focused on turning our very own citizens against us. Interestingly though, it seems that Yadran efforts appear to be concentrated on Redamon Prime, which is a bit weird. If anything, we would have expected their propaganda to be targeted at their own people on Yadrani or Katanab, so that they would rise up against us and force us to deploy our forces there, instead of continuing our offensive. Then again, Redamon Prime is a bit of a symbolic planet to Yadrans. It was there where their refugees were settled after their capital was captured by the Mind, and over the years, they became, well, maybe not fully trusted, but still valuable members of local society. And now, with agents of the Empress spreading their propaganda, that balance between our people and Yadran refugees is threatened. More than that, we must assume that this propaganda is just a distracting operation. Redamon Prime may be called a culture world in the media, but it still houses one of our most strategically important facilities, the mysterious Asian Pyramid. So, it may be that Yadran agents simply want to use the chaos to enact some sort of a covert op there. After all, the Yanari attack on Minerva was a proof that the coalition is focusing on our key facilities. So, now we have to divert our fleets and ground forces in order to stop them, especially since their propaganda soon started to spread to our other planets. Fortunately though, our marshals managed to capture several Yadran operatives, and they learned a very valuable piece of information. The propaganda efforts were coordinated from the planet called Shitanask, between our core territories and Yadrani, and, according to reports, the planet itself wasn't that well defended. So, as soon as this intel reached our military command, a new plan was formulated. Admiral Ibrahim was to take her fleet and engage orbital defenses around Shitanask, and once they were cleared, Manticore would prepare the planet for our invasion. We wouldn't use our main invasion force though. General Telavin's troops were still battered and exhausted after the Battle of Falcabos, but in the end we didn't have to call them. It was time for our General Branitsky to finally leave Yadrani behind, a risky move considering local distrust of our leadership, and get into the thick of it. The mechanized command is on the move once again, and with a bit of luck, their new assignment won't cause a massive uprising on all the Yadran homeworld. And very soon, the operation to capture Shitanask has begun, with our fleet engaging enemy orbital defenses. As you can see though, Yadran's spaceport and a lone, battered corvette are no match for our fleet. At this point we have such an overwhelming firepower at our disposal that engaging those spaceports scattered in hostile territory poses absolutely no challenge. And to think that around 30 years ago, during Aramathi Liberation War, such installations were considered a grave threat, and we had to spend years planning and building our forces in order to take on even a single one of them. Today, as you can see, the situation is way different. Our navy fires several broadsides, launches a barrage of missiles, and that's it. An imposing orbital structure and a critical part of interplanetary industry is gone within minutes, without us suffering even a single casualty in the process. Now Manticore can move in and soften enemy defenses before Branitsky's forces, who are already in the system, can land on the surface. But as we do that, one destroyer has been detached from the fleet and sent to secure debris of that lone corvette that was stationed in the orbit. And in the wreckage they found something very interesting. It seems that while the corvette was built by Yadrans, it was actually crewed by the Yanari. That means that all those sporadic rumors we heard from the kingdom, that claim that this new empress is simply a puppet of the League, may turn out to be true, which gives us a certain opportunity. If the Empress really is controlled by a foreign power, it may give us a chance to soon launch a propaganda campaign on our own, one in which we'll try to convince Yadrans to revolt against their own leadership, not us. But before we can do that, we need to first secure an undeniable proof, and what better way to do it than to capture Shitanask and find the propaganda center. Soon, the bombardment phase of our invasion was complete, and with Yadran defenses turned into rubble, our bizarre freak show of an army could proceed with the plan, and companies of battle droids, mercenaries, combat mechs, burst-side spiders, and one bloodthirsty general descended upon dragon-like defenders. In his signature style, Branitsky immediately began isolating smaller pockets of Yadran resistance and then crushed them without mercy. He ensured that no civilians would be harmed, but some still were, as often is the case during war, but when it came to Yadran soldiers, there were no second chances there. Every surrounded group received exactly one option to surrender. If they agreed, they were disarmed and transferred to temporary prison camps, but if they refused, Branitsky's forces had no mercy for them, and several Yadran brigades have been wiped out to the last, until finally, exactly 1 month after our invasion force set foot on Shitanask, the last major Yadran unit laid down their arms and surrendered to our advancing troops. Nearly 4 million of our enemies lost their lives during that invasion, while casualties on our side number less than 80,000, most of which were concentrated among our mercenary regiments, who were acting as a vanguard. So, the planet of Shitanask has been captured. Branitsky himself hoisted black and white flag of the Commonwealth above the planetary capital, but the most important part of our victory was the capture of this hidden propaganda center, a move that will surely throw a wrench into Yadran plans. Granted, we will still have to deal with the damage their propaganda already caused, but at least we prevented them from spreading more lies. And, in doing so, we gathered the evidence we were hoping for. The Empress of all Yadrans, as it turns out, is not as pure, just, and enlightened as she presents herself to be. Now, it is only a matter of deciding what to do with that knowledge. Copy that. Well, of course they're resisting. Not sure what they're trying to accomplish though, considering we control the rest of the planet. Anyway, I'm sending you 2 companies of battle droids and a lance of mechs. That should convince them to surrender. If not, just surround them in that town and try to starve them out. No need to take risks when we don't have to. But I'll leave it up to you, Captain. Just make sure there won't be too much collateral if you decide to go in guns blazing. Last thing we need is to give those bloody dragons more fuel for their propaganda. Now get it sorted. Ranitsky out. Alright, Lieutenant, what's that signal I'm seeing here? Ah, so the traitor decided to finally show himself. Very well, Elsie, patch him through.
Greetings, Grand Marshal of the Commonwealth. I half expected I would be kept on hold forever, or relegated to some low-ranking officer. That you decided to spare your time and talk to me yourself is an honor.
If I understand my reports correctly, your intel helped my men take over a heavily defended propaganda center. According to my officers, it was a bloody fortress, so the least I could do is to find a few minutes to talk to someone who spared us a lot of casualties. But I warn you, unless you state your name and intentions, this conversation is over.
Of course. My apologies, Grand Marshal. I am Husk Izor Malnaj, former Duke of Raikan Principality on Katanab, back when Katanab was still in Yadran hands. Today, I'm Mir Malnaj, and my intentions here are to ensure that my people will have peace, and a future so they could enjoy that peace.
In that case, you should probably try pleading your case in the Imperial court, not here. It's your people who violated that peace you want so much, not us.
Indeed they have, but they have done so because they were lied to. Our late King Mezak, may he walk safely in the Azure halls, was afraid of you, but he understood that there are worse threats to our people out there. Threats like the Biluan Mind, or Yanari slaver guilds, or Zrakan fanatics. But when King Mezak was assassinated, the new Empress named your people as enemy number 1 of our nation. She preyed on your occupation of our capital, but in truth there was no need for this. When the Empress speaks, Yadrans listen. This is just how it is. But the thing is, she would have never seized power if not for help of Yanari agents. Their Shadowbounds helped her organize this entire coup, and in return she promised to support them in war.
We expected something like that, but it's good to have a confirmation. Still, I'm not sure why should I care about your plea for peace. If your people were unwilling to join this war and suspected foreign manipulation, you could have just removed your Empress from power and not follow her idiotic orders.
Grand Marshal, to raise a hand against someone of Imperial bloodline is a grave offense, a crime worse than murder.
Obviously, but it doesn't seem to stop your Imperials from raising hands against everyone else, including your own kings. Truth is, you brought this entire mess on yourselves, so your pleading now won't change anything. At this point, your only chance for peace is to surrender.
Which is precisely what I want to offer, Grand Marshal. Over the last few years, I managed to gather support from a number of more reasonable Carthemas, those who understand that this war will bring nothing but misery to us. We may not be numerous and powerful enough to oppose the Empress and her forces, but we can still help you in this conflict, if you are willing to help us in return.
I'm listening.
You managed to capture 4 of our worlds, but I assume that our planets are not your goal. To bring this war to an end, you will have to take the fight to Yanari space, which means leaving our worlds behind. As soon as you leave though, you can be sure that surviving servants of the Empress will resurface and retake them, but that's where my people and I come in. I can organize militias to keep worlds you've already occupied in your hands, theoretically at least, and prevent Imperial resistance from recapturing key military installations.
Sounds reasonable. Suspicious and potentially dangerous, but reasonable, if you're telling the truth. But let me guess, you want us to place you on the throne once the war is over, right?
No, Grand Marshal. What I want is nothing but a promise of extraction. By keeping our worlds under your control, my supporters will forever be branded as traitors. So when the war is over, I want you to extract them into your territory. Nothing more, nothing less. For years now, we lived in fear of your Commonwealth, but in recent years, you have proven yourself to be not monsters that our monarchy wanted us to believe you were, but, well, decent beings. You had no reason to help refugees from Yadrani and Katanab when they fled into your realm, but you did anyway. And if not for my hatred towards you back then, my family and serfs would still be alive among those refugees. When you took our worlds from the mind, you could simply leave our people to die or enslave them. Instead, you fed them and rebuilt their homes. You even extended your own rights to them and treated them with honor. In the end, it all boils down to this. You have proven to be honorable, while our own leaders have been blinded by fear. That is why we want to help you and then leave the kingdom behind, Grand Marshal, to learn from you.
Understood. It was a good speech, Malnaj, but I do not believe a single word of it. Luckily for you, I'm not the person who will make such a decision, and when the council will hear your story, they're going to love it. As for myself, I suppose I can appreciate your help with occupation, unless you're going to stab us in the back the second we turn away from you.
I swear on what little honor I have left, Grand Marshal, that I will not turn on you or your people.
Very well. In that case, I'll send your offer to Ortis. We'll contact you as soon as we have an official answer. Also, you don't have to call me a Grand Marshal, I'm just a general.
Ah, pardon me then. I merely adapted our own title of Supreme Commander to you. But isn't that Telavin also a general? I assumed you were the main leader of your armies. Hard to imagine that you would be of the same rank as one of the serviles.
There must have been some sort of interference there, Carthema. For a second there, I could swear you called my fellow officer, protege, and most importantly my friend, a servile. But surely you wouldn't do that, am I correct? Because such an insult would mean that all deals are off.
Of course, General. It was just an interference. Turns out there's still a lot I need to learn about your people. In the meantime, I'll organize my troops and send them your way. May the Sun Goddess always smile upon you.
For now though, we're back to our offensive, and in order to continue it, we actually had to develop a bit of a new strategy. See, up to this point, our military operations were mostly focused around a single point. Our fleet moved to targets and cleared the way for our ground forces, but with our enemies all around us, this simply cannot continue. If we move all our forces away from the planets we conquered, then our foes will simply take them back while we're away. So, in order to prevent that, Commonwealth decided to completely ruin its internal finances and deploy 2 new fleets, much smaller than Manticore, but still powerful enough to deal with scattered forces of our enemies. These forces are Strike Force Enfield, that will move to orbit of Shitanask and relieve General Braniski, and Strike Force Minotaur, which will then be renamed to Strike Force Behemoth. That is already stationed in Zamathon system to ensure that Yadrans won't be able to recapture Falcon boss, while General Telavin and his troops are away. Now, at this time these forces are not equal in power, with Enfield being much more powerful, but the reason for that is that this particular battle group has another job to do before relieving Granitsky. The Kingdom of Yadra still has 1 shipyard left in the area, and with recent upgrades, this base can actually construct capital ships like battle cruisers. So, in order to ensure that we won't suddenly get jumped by a few of them, Enfield is going to move to that system and take that dockyard out. And in the meantime, far away from the front, our politicians are going to have to do some work of their own. Namely, they will have to try and save our economy, that is very quickly collapsing under the weight of this war. And in order to do that, we're going to do something no one ever expected we'd do. We'll actually sell our raw materials to one of our allies for a quick cash boost. Normally, as you may remember, the trend is completely opposite, with Commonwealth going to extreme lengths to procure as many minerals and materials as possible in order to build up our forces. But doing so this time would make our situation even worse. Sure, we could build a few more carriers or cruisers, but that would run our economy into the ground even faster. So for now, we'll just have to hold the assembly lines and shipwright crews and sell our entire stockpile to buy ourselves a few more months in the green. Fortunately, our allies are willing to give us relatively decent prices, especially for bulk transactions, but it's obvious that this won't be the only one such transaction before the war is over. All the more reason to get a move on then. Then we received some more news from the north. As we expected, these berserkers won their war against mysterious machines of Xenoc Forge and pushed through with all their demands: 4 planets to be ceded by the automatons, a deal that reduces Xenoc Forge to only a handful of planets, almost completely surrounded by murderous Dis. But in a certain way, this peace, while terrible, does have an upside. The Utkavongo no longer have to worry about fighting on that front, so they can muster their forces, what's left of them, to delay the Mind. Of course, the chances of them actually succeeding are still 0, but at least now they won't be attacked from the rear, so they could possibly organize some kind of evacuation there. But it may be a bit too late for that. As you can see, Billy 1 Combat Swarm is already in orbit of Utkal, and hordes of warrior drones roam the surface, clashing with Utkavongo defenders. For now, our allies managed to hold their ground, barely, but the reports we receive from their homeworld are not optimistic, and it seems that it's only a matter of days before their capital will fall, without us being able to do anything to stop it. Day after day, communications between Utkal and Ortus grow more and more desperate, until finally, on 21st of January 2265, they cease completely. The homeworld of our Utkavongo allies has fallen, with almost 20 billion citizens still being trapped there. Fortunately, it will be a while before the Mind can deploy its hunter drones to begin the process of extermination and harvesting, so perhaps there's still a chance for an outside power to intervene and prevent the genocide. Until then, we can only hope that Utkavongo will organize some sort of underground resistance and keep their people alive for as long as they can. Thankfully, not all news from the front are bad. As you can see, while our forces dealt with Kingdom of Yadra, our Shalani allies were busy deep behind the lines of Zrakan Union, where they managed to capture 2 of their planets, the Tomb World they've been sieging when the war began, and another Alpine planet called Cruise Cocoon. And right now, the Coalition and their allies are busy in the orbit of yet another Zrakan planet, very close to the capital system of Zramas. All in all, it seems that the Union has been taken out of the war, which means that chances of any attack coming from that direction are practically 0. So, our equestrian allies have proven themselves to be worthy addition to this conflict, and to think that few years ago we were almost sure they won't contribute anything. Instead, step by step, together we bring this war closer to a satisfactory end. Not all reports we receive back home are about the war, though. In the recent months, a series of very interesting messages arrived from our distant colony of Morals. It seems that this cold, mountainous planet was once, very, very long time ago, inhabited by some sort of intelligent race. See, we might have colonized Morals years ago, but there are still many areas, especially in the mountains, that have still not been fully explored. And, in one of those more remote regions, a group of our rangers found something remarkable. An entire, well-preserved vault containing books, paintings, statues, or even several corpses of long-dead aliens. Immediately, they contacted the Moros University, a facility founded by Governor Seclin a few years ago, and soon a full expedition has been sent to take a look at these mysterious artifacts. And several months later, the discovery has officially been broadcasted to the public. It seems that this long-dead race never actually progressed beyond Iron Age before they disappeared, but unlike some other primitive civilizations, they were extremely focused on creating art, most important part of which was literature. Turns out, these aliens wrote hundreds, if not thousands of long tales, very similar in their form to old sagas that people of Scandinavia wrote long time ago on Earth. But that was not the greatest surprise. When our researchers translated those sagas, they, on a whim, decided to mount an expedition to several places mentioned in these stories. And when they arrived there, they found ruins of ancient cities, which means that this civilization not only wrote epic stories that very quickly became very popular among our people, but they also used said stories to narrate their actual history, which means we now have a massive amount of data that we can use to fully uncover the history of Moros. There is, however, one thing that concerned our expeditions. These aliens clearly understood the value of written history, but in all the tales we've uncovered so far, we found no indication, not even a slightest clue, as to what happened to them. It's obvious that their civilization has been dead for tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years, but what eradicated it? Was it some sort of cataclysm, climate change, outside intervention? We do not know, but with more and more researchers moving to Moros to explore these ancient sites, it's probably only a matter of time before we'll find out. But while the media were busy covering Moral's story, another thing happened in the background. After long deliberations and negotiations, our friend from the Zhir Compact and Ahadi conglomerate decided to help us in our conflict by declaring war on the Zrakan Union, and by extension their defensive allies, Yadrans and Yanari. Now, this is purely an opportunistic move, sure, since our enemies are already at the end of their ropes, but it still may prove to be a deciding factor once it comes to peace negotiations. With new enemies on the horizon, our foes may be more inclined to accept our peace terms, which is precisely something we need right now. So, with forces of our allies on the move, the war has turned in our favor almost completely, and we can begin to wrap it up by taking the fight into Yanari territory. And here you can see just how well our navy is suited to take on the League. In theory, their orbital stations are formidable defenses, covered from top to bottom in missile launchers that would cause some very significant damage to our ships. But with recent upgrades to Manticore and a few new carriers, we're able to completely negate their damage. The station fires dozens of missiles at us, but in the end not even a single one of them can reach our fleet. Our PD guns and interceptor squadrons taking them out almost as soon as they leave their launch tubes. In the end, this powerful defense system is blown to pieces by our fleet without scoring even a single hit, opening a way for our invasion forces who are already on their way. Interestingly, it seems that the League decided to cut their losses at this point. We haven't seen their ships ever since they retreated from Rama's system, and it seems that the slavers are not even that willing to protect their outlying colonies. Perhaps their plan is to prepare some sort of a last stand in their capital. Regardless, it means that we now have unrestricted access to their Plov system, which we can use to quickly construct a wormhole generator, which we will need to reach their homeworld. Before that happens, however, we need to capture the planet Zikash in this system. It's not absolutely necessary, but Branitsky and Televin argued that it may give our forces some insight into Yanari ground tactics, since we haven't really encountered their land troops before. Only thing we know is that they tend to use slaves in their armies, same as Zrakan Union, but that's not really much to go by. So, the fleet commenced orbital bombardment, and soon Televin's forces were deployed to the surface, and as you can see, they have been reorganized a bit. Over the years, our two generals developed distinct ways of leadership. Televin became very efficient at using regular infantry, both humans and Kithris, while Branitsky became more of an experimenter and an expert in using his mixed forces to an overwhelming effect, crushing enemy morale with the sheer spectacle of his advancing forces. So, it may seem like his mechanized command would be better suited to lead the first offensive, but after our fleet scanned the planet, we realized that Yanari defenses were almost non-existent, so the decision was made to send Televin's infantry instead. That way, once they capture the planet, they will be able to rest and reinforce, while Branitsky and Manticore could immediately move to Yanari home system and proceed with another invasion. It may be a bit reckless, but for the sake of our Utkavongo allies we need to speed things up. And in the meantime, back home in the Skoron system, the first one we colonized, our construction crews have just finished building yet another solar habitat, the Belenos station that, in theory, is supposed to become yet another major power plant and trading station, just like the Inti. This time, however, the very placement of this station will ensure its prosperity, because it's right in the middle of the highway all our traders from Ortus and other northern colonies have to take if they want to reach Curaçao. With luck, once Belenos is operational, it will be enough to save us from financial crisis. Not fully, but it will still be an important step towards a stable economy. Back to the war now. After a few months of bombardment, Televin's infantry finally landed on the surface of Yanari colony, where they met almost no resistance. There were around 7 million defenders on the planet, scattered after our bombing runs, but it quickly became obvious that they were not interested in fighting. In most cases, whenever our troops approached their positions, they fired a few token shots at us and then surrendered, along with all civilian population in the area. Only in few locations, small groups of Yanari judges, their secret police, fought us to the last man, but those situations were few and far between, and our infantry suffered less than 10,000 losses while capturing this planet, a number so little that we actually suffered more wounds due to breakdowns of life support systems, something that happens all the time since maintenance is a never-ending hell, than to actual enemy fire. So, while Telavin and his troops secured the planet and regrouped, Manticore and Mechanized Command moved forward, and using our freshly built wormhole station, entered Janus system, home of Yannari League, where, to their complete and utter surprise, they found almost no defenses as well. There was no enemy fleet preparing for a last stand there, as we expected, just some orbital defenses that, as we already know, pose absolutely no threat to our fleet. What's more, preliminary scans of the planetary defenses indicated that Yannari presence on the ground was limited as well. It seems that our enemies simply do not wish to fight us here, or they do not have the means, but in the end it means only one thing: easier job for us. Soon, Branitsky's forces began invasion of Yisht, secondary Yannari world in this system, but it was there when things suddenly became weird. Back home, our military command received an extremely odd message. Apparently, General Telavin has been killed while leading one of our droid armies. Only thing is, Telavin wasn't even there. He and his infantrymen were still in transit, about to reach Yisht orbit, far away from any danger. Baffled, Orta's command asked Branitsky's staff and Telavin's officers to check again. Perhaps it was nothing more but some sort of a glitch in the systems, but the report was still the same. General Telavin is gone. One day he was touring his ship inspecting cryopods, and the next his corpse was found on the surface of Yisht by some technicians who maintain the droids. But how it happened, no one can tell, and until we receive the autopsy report, this entire situation will be kept in secret. Our infantrymen will simply learn that the general has been redeployed due to health issues, and now they fall under command of General Branitsky. As for the technicians who found Telavin's corpse, they will be temporarily sent back to orbit and kept in confinement, so that they won't damage morale of our troops. And let's face it, the situation clearly could cause a blow to morale, somehow, in a way that we cannot even imagine. One of our top military officers died without anyone noticing, and his body was moved from his fleet onto the surface of Yannari world within a day. Something is seriously wrong there, and we will have to get our best people on the case to figure out what the hell is going on. At least there's a silver lining though. Yisht has fallen into our hands, and the way to Yannari capital is open. Time to end this. And soon, the hopefully last part of this war has begun. As soon as Manticore was done with their standard bombing runs, Branitsky ordered our entire combined army to land on the surface of Yan and eliminate any Yannari that would dare to oppose us. But, once again, despite fighting on their very own homeworld, League's defenders simply gave up. As Branitsky's report described it, whenever our enemies noticed our troops, they fired a single shot into the sky and then surrendered without any kind of negotiations. And it was there when we learned about their orders. Leadership of the League abandoned the system over a year ago, and since then, the only orders these ground troops received was a single word: survive. So, in a way, by denying us battle, these Yannari defenders accomplished their mission. More than that, it seems that when the Masters of the League fled, they stripped the planet of all useful data. Every government facility we found was empty, every military warehouse was cleaned from top to bottom. The Masters even shipped the contents of their mansions away, so when we captured them we found just empty walls. Only in the middle of the capital city, in the main government building, a company of 1,000 judges mounted a last stand, but when they were wiped out we realized that they were defending empty rooms as well. And then, just like that, within mere 10 days, it was over. Yan has fallen, and its population quietly complied with all our commands. That's good news for our soldiers, of course, because they were not forced to fight in a pitched battle, but on the other hand it feels wrong somehow. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that with Yannari capital taken over, we are now clearly the winning side of this war, and soon the long silent comlinks between Commonwealth and the League spark to life. The war is over. The Masters, in the name of their entire coalition, accept their defeat and our terms. Falcabos, the second capital of Kingdom of Yadra, falls into our hands. In the far east, Zrakon tomb world of Queni Gilgam becomes part of Sholani coalition. The Yannari actually come out of this war surprisingly easily. They simply pay an enormous reparations to the Utkavongo to help bolster their war efforts, but other than that, they don't lose any territory. Not a perfect deal, sure, but at this point, with Billy once on the move, we don't really have time to push for a better deal. As soon as the truce is signed, new orders are transferred to Ibrahim and Branitsky. They are to return to Ortus, resupply, and immediately move out to support the Utkavongo. But as our fleet leaves Yan, they receive some very bad news. The wormhole station in Plov system, the one they used to get to Yannari capital, has been a target of a terrorist attack and was completely destroyed. That means that right now, 80% of our fleet and our entire land army is stranded in the middle of Yannari space without any means of coming back home. The celebrations on our worlds end as quickly as they began. We have won a war, but somehow we are now in a worse situation than when we were when it was still raging. We will see how Commonwealth will deal with this problem in the next episode of Second Chance. See you next time.
Unbelievable. So many assurances, so many promises, lies, each and every one of them. Explain to me, Shadowbound, why shouldn't I just order my guards to cut off your head for this treachery? You will pardon me, your majesty, but I don't know anything about any treachery. Don't play fool now, slaver. You know full well what I'm talking about. The peace deal that your leaders have negotiated with humans. Peace deal that, conveniently for you, leaves your borders intact, while we have to concede our capital to them. Again. I'm afraid I had no say in negotiation of this peace, your majesty. My leaders merely accepted terms presented to them by the Commonwealth. Of course, after witnessing your actions, and your failures, my masters simply had no incentive to worry about your nation. After all, you are the one responsible for our defeats, not us. Failures? My people have fought to the best of their abilities, Yannari. They kept enemy fleet busy while you were wasting time in Zrakan space. They delayed humans at every step and slayed millions of them during their heroic defense of Falcon, unlike your own troops who dropped their weapons at the mere sight of Commonwealth banners. That decision was dictated by pure pragmatism, something that you clearly do not seem to understand, your majesty. Like your armies, our forces had no means to stop human invasion once it began, so there was no reason for us to prolong the inevitable and suffer unnecessary losses. And while I'll admit that your knights have caused a significant damage to Commonwealth armies, the end result was still the same, our complete and utter defeat. My only regret is that I haven't realized it sooner. In truth, you have doomed our coalition at the very beginning, when your fleet detached from ours to mount that pointless raid on human habitat station. You received your orders when the war started. Our forces were to move into Zrakan space together, regroup with them, and mount a joint attack on Rama's system to capture human research facilities there. Instead, you seeked, I don't even know what it was. Glory? An easy victory to boost pathetic morale of your people? But it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you failed to follow our plan, so do not complain that my masters threw you to the Commonwealth. I do not follow your orders, Yannari. I am the Empress of all Yadrant, and I will not bow to whims of some collective of slavers. Insult me or my people again, and your masters will receive your head as a payment for their betrayal. I see. Shame, considering that this collective placed you on the throne that you seem to value so much. My masters have predicted you may become unreliable, but they failed to see just how quickly you will turn against us. Fortunately, we took steps to prevent such situations, your majesty. I wish to see you try anything, slaver. To raise a hand against someone of Imperial bloodline is the highest offense. Touch me, and my people will rip you and your entire delegation to shreds before the day is over. I have no doubts about it, your majesty, but I'm not going to even look in your direction. We are aware that we can't lay a claw on you without serious repercussions. But I can. Sister, how are you? How am I alive, sister? How did I survive after you left me and your entire army for death on Falcon? Is that what you wanted to ask? Sister, I can explain. Of course you can. It seems that it's all you're doing these days, explaining yourself to your lords who plot behind your back, or to these Yannari aliens who pull your strings. Instead, you should explain yourself to your people, why you abandoned them, why you fled the field and lied to them, while they fought and died in millions in your name. I would have died with them if not for this Shadowbound who managed to extract me off the planet after it fell into human hands. But our fallen warriors, sister, they believed in you and they fought like heroes from ancient tales for you. I saw knights charging with swords at human soldiers in armor 4 times their size. I saw levies holding their ground against hordes of warriors who all wore the same emotionless face. All that because emperors and empresses were the epitome of honorable conduct, leaders who helped our people overcome worst times, not cowards who flee from battle to hide behind dignitaries of foreign powers. But even that is not your greatest crime, sister. You have destroyed our honor. For centuries, lords of the kingdom settled their differences peacefully, but after you ordered King Mezak assassinated, they realized that our honor, even Imperial honor, is nothing but an empty word. Even now, our dukes and counts slaughter each other over petty squabbles, while you hide here in the palace and ignore all of it. This is why I cannot stand idly by, sister. I have to remove you from power to save what can still be saved. Guards, as next in line to Imperial throne, I invoke my right to seize it for the benefit of all Yadrans. Escort your former Empress to her quarters and ensure she has all she needs there, but do not dare to cause her any harm. Let us show that we are better than she was.
Wise words, Your Majesty. The Empress is gone. Long live the Empress. Although, if I may be so bold to suggest it, it may be wise to exile your sister somewhere where she won't cause us any trouble. Now, let us focus on...
There is no us, Yanari. You are to pack your belongings and leave before the day is over. The same goes for the rest of your delegation. You have proved that we are nothing but a tool to you. So as soon as current crisis with Jir Combat and Ahadi conglomerate is over, you can consider all treaties between us null and void. No, I do not wish to listen to your vile, poisonous words anymore. Leave, now. I have a nation to rebuild and honor to restore, even though it may be too late for that.